The app sent me to an address that didn't exist, but someone was already waiting. By the time this happened, I'd been doing takeaway deliveries around Whitburn-on-Sea for about 8 months, usually after finishing my shift at Patel's off-license on Harbor Road. It wasn't meant to be permanent or anything. I was just trying to keep on top of rent while doing a plumbing course at the college in Sunderland, and night deliveries paid better than day runs, especially on Fridays when half the town couldn't be bothered leaving the house once the wind came in off the sea. Most nights were dead normal. Annoying sometimes, yeah. Drunk blokes forgetting they'd ordered, people taking ages to answer the door, the odd estate where the numbers made no sense. But normal. That's probably why I ignored so many warning signs that night, because every single one of them had a reasonable explanation right up until they didn't. It was early November, cold in that damp coastal way that gets under your clothes no matter what you wear. And I remember the whole town feeling strange even before I started driving. Not dangerous exactly, just off. The promenade had that empty look it gets when the season's completely over, when all of the bright bits are gone and what's left is shuttered kiosks, wet benches, and seagulls dragging rubbish across the pavement. The wind was bad enough that the hanging sign outside the King's Head kept knocking against the wall in this uneven rhythm that sounded, at least to me, like someone trying not to knock properly on a door. I finished at the shop just after 10:30. Mr. Patel had already locked the side fridge and was doing that thing he always did, where he counted scratch cards twice because he trusted nobody under the age of 30. He asked if I was heading out delivering again, and I said yeah, just for a few hours. He gave me a look over his glasses and said, "Don't go past the old Holiday Park if the fog comes in. Sat nav goes funny there." He said it half joking, but the way he said it stayed with me. I laughed and told him I'd survive a few chip shop runs, and he said, "That's what people say before doing something stupid." Then he pulled the shutter halfway, and that was that. My name's Callum Reeves, by the way, and I should probably say this now because it matters later. I'm not the sort of person who scares easily in a dramatic way. I don't scream at films or tell ghost stories or think every sound in the dark means something. But I do have this habit, and I've always had it, of noticing when something feels wrong before I can explain why. Not in a clever way, more in a sick, stomach-dropping way. Like my body knows before my head catches up. Usually I ignore it. Most people do. You don't want to be the idiot who makes a fuss over nothing. The first couple of deliveries that night were exactly what you'd expect. One to a semi near the retail park where a bloke answered the door in socks and acted shocked he had to pay for garlic dip. Another to a row of holiday lets near the seafront where 2 women in dressing gowns were already half cut and trying to get me to settle an argument about whether gulls can smell fear. I was in a decent mood after that, just driving with the heater turned up and the radio low, watching the roads empty out as the town got quieter. It was one of those nights where every traffic light seemed to stay green because hardly anyone else was out. The app kept throwing small jobs my way, and I kept taking them. Easy money. Nothing memorable. At 11:43, just as I was thinking I'd do one last run and head home, a new order came through from a place called Mondo Grill on Station Lane. 2 items only. A chicken wrap, cheesy chips, can of Tango. Total bill just over £7. But the payout on my screen was ridiculous. Not life-changing or anything, but enough to make me stop at a red light and check I hadn't read it wrong. It was nearly £30 for a drop less than 6 miles away. I honestly thought it was a glitch. Sometimes people tip well, especially if they're drunk or trying to make up for being miles out, but this was different. It didn't fit. Tiny order, massive payout, and then underneath it a delivery note in block capitals. Do not knock. Do not ring. Leave by side entrance. Message only. I remember reading that 3 times at the lights. Then they changed. Someone beeped behind me, and I pulled off thinking, fair enough, probably a baby asleep in the house or a dog that goes mental. That was the reasonable explanation. That's what I went with. Even so, something about the wording bothered me. It wasn't polite. It wasn't, please don't knock. It sounded like an instruction, like I was being told how to behave before I'd even arrived. Mondo Grill was one of those places squeezed between a laundrette and a tanning shop, with a steamed up front window and a delivery scooter parked half on the pavement. When I went in, the usual heat and grease hit me straight away, but the place felt oddly flat. No customers waiting, no music from the kitchen, just the hum of the drink fridge and a lad behind the till scrolling on his phone. He looked up when I gave the order number and said, "You're quick," in this distracted way that made it sound like he'd been expecting someone else. "Busy night?" I asked while he bagged the food. He shrugged. "Dead, mostly." There was another man standing near the window while we talked. Not a customer, as far as I could tell. Mid-40s maybe, pale face, dark waterproof coat zipped right up, no food in his hand, no umbrella, just standing there looking out at the road. I noticed him because he didn't move once. Not when the till lad spoke, not when someone shouted from the kitchen, not even when the front door opened and let a burst of cold air in. He only turned slightly when I took the bag, and even then it wasn't enough for me to properly see his face. Just his cheek and one eye in the glass reflection. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was drunk. But I remember this stupid little thing that made me feel odd. The entire front of his coat was speckled with rain, except for one dry patch over the left shoulder, as if he'd been standing somewhere under cover for ages, turned at an angle, watching the same bit of pavement. I headed back to the car, put the food on the passenger seat, and glanced up once before pulling away. He was still there at the window, not looking at the till, not looking into the kitchen, looking out. That should have been nothing. It could still have been nothing. But it's funny what sticks in your head after the fact. The address was listed as Gullview Cottages, which sounded nicer than it really was. It wasn't cottages like you'd imagine, not postcard stuff. It was a short private road near the north edge of town, where older houses backed onto rough ground and the road narrowed into a lane barely wide enough for two cars to pass. I'd only been up there once before in daylight. At night, with the weather getting worse, it felt miles away from the front and the pubs and the chip shops. Just a different version of the same town, quieter and meaner. On the way there, the app froze twice. Not fully crashed, just that strange stutter where the map keeps your car in the wrong place for a second or two before lurching forward. Again, I thought nothing of it. Signal around there was always patchy. But then, near a junction by the allotments, I came up behind a white transit van stopped dead at a giveaway line. No indicator on, no brake light flicker, no movement at all. There was no traffic coming. Nothing from the right, nothing from the left. Just the van sitting there in the middle of the road as if the driver had forgotten where he was. I waited maybe 5 seconds, then 10, long enough to start feeling awkward. I gave the lightest tap of the horn, barely more than a nudge. The van moved instantly. Not slowly either. It jerked forward hard, took the turn too fast, then disappeared down a road I wasn't taking. I muttered something to myself, half annoyed, half unsettled, and kept driving. It was probably somebody on their phone. Still, my hands had tightened on the wheel without me noticing. By then, the town had gone properly quiet. You know that feeling when everywhere looks shut but not asleep? Like there are still people indoors watching telly, boiling kettles, arguing in kitchens, but outside it's just you and the sound of your own engine. That was what it felt like. The sea was somewhere off to my left, invisible in the dark, and every now and then the wind carried that cold, briny smell through the vents. Terraced houses gave way to detached ones with taller hedges and gravel drives. Street lamps got farther apart. My radio started hissing and cut out altogether. Then my phone buzzed in the holder, a message through the delivery app. Make sure you've got the correct house. Last driver left it at the wrong one. I stared at it longer than I should have while rolling towards another junction. It wasn't the content that bothered me. It was how quickly it had come, as if whoever ordered was watching my progress in real time and getting impatient before I'd even reached the lane. I typed back at the next stop. Nearly there. What does the house look like? No reply. I drove on for another minute. Then the lane appeared on my left, narrower than I remembered, with overgrown hedges scraping the edge of the road, and one flickering lamp at the entrance that made everything beyond it look darker than it should have. I turned in slowly. The tires crackled over loose grit. There were 4 houses in the row, maybe 5 if you counted a smaller one tucked farther back, and all of them had curtains drawn. Only one porch light was on, near the far end. My phone buzzed again before I'd even stopped. Not that one. That was the exact message, 3 words. Not that one. I actually checked around me then, properly checked, because there was no way they should have known which house I was looking at unless they could see me. I remember peering through the windscreen, then in the mirrors, expecting maybe someone at an upstairs window. But the lane looked dead. No movement behind the curtains, no one on the pavement. Just parked cars, wet hedges, and a black strip of passage running between 2 of the houses towards whatever was behind them. I swallowed and typed, "Which one then?" No answer. But then everything seemed fine, like nothing would happen. That's the worst bit looking back. There was no music cue, no huge warning, nothing dramatic. Just me sitting there in a warm car with cooling food on the seat beside me, telling myself not to be stupid. People are weird, I thought. They send strange messages. They don't answer properly. They act like you're meant to know their house by instinct. It happens. Drop the food, get paid, go home. So I picked up the bag and got out. The cold hit me straight away. Not just cold, but that wet, raw kind that makes your ears ache. Somewhere nearby, a gate was tapping lightly in the wind. I walked up the short path to the house with the porch light, half expecting another message correcting me again, but my phone stayed dark. As I got closer, I noticed the front garden was too neat for November. No leaves, no bins left out, no decorations, nothing at all out of place. It had that looked-after feel older people's homes sometimes have, where even the silence seems tidy. I knocked, even though the note said not to. I don't know why I did. Maybe because the whole thing had already started feeling wrong, and knocking at the front door suddenly seemed more normal than creeping around to a side entrance I couldn't even see from the lane. At first, nothing happened. Then, after a good 20 seconds, I heard slow steps inside. Not one person rushing down the hall. Slow, careful steps, like whoever was coming hadn't been expecting anyone and didn't much want to answer. The door opened on the chain. An elderly woman looked out at me through the gap. Small, silver hair pinned back, cardigan buttoned right to the throat. But the first thing I noticed wasn't what she looked like. It was that she looked frightened before I'd said a word. "Sorry to bother you," I said, holding up the bag slightly. "Delivery for." "We haven't ordered," she said at once. Her voice was thin but firm, not confused, certain. I glanced at my phone, then back at the number on her gatepost. It matched. "Goldview Cottages, number 4? "Yes," she said, "and we haven't ordered." Behind her, the hallway was dark except for a lamp farther back. I could smell furniture polish and something faintly medicinal, the kind of smell you get in very old houses. She kept one hand on the edge of the door, and I realized she wasn't really looking at me anymore. Her eyes had shifted past my shoulder. I stepped back instinctively. "Sorry, must be the wrong address." For one second, I thought she was going to say something else. Her mouth even moved like she'd changed her mind. But instead, she whispered, "You needn't stand there," and shut the door quickly enough that the chain rattled. Not slammed, not panicked, quick, controlled, like she didn't want to make a noise. I stood there longer than I should have, bag in hand, staring at my own reflection in the dark glass panels. Then I turned. The lane was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in the few moments I'd been on that doorstep. The air felt tighter somehow. I looked toward the gap between the houses, that narrow side passage running behind the gardens, and saw that the gravel there had 2 fresh tire marks cutting through it, deep and wet, as if some vehicle had been there recently, even though no car should have fit. At the far end of the passage, where it opened into darkness, something metal caught the weak. I remember just standing there for a second, halfway between the front door and my car, staring at that message like it didn't belong on my phone. "We can see you." Not I. Not the customer. We? I honestly thought at first it was just someone messing about. People do that. They think it's funny to wind up delivery drivers, especially late at night. But the way it was written, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a statement, like something already decided. I turned slowly, trying not to make it obvious I was looking, scanning the windows of the houses, the parked cars, the hedges. Everything was still. No curtains twitching, no shadows moving behind glass, no sound apart from that same gate tapping somewhere in the wind. But the feeling didn't go away. It got worse. Because once someone tells you they can see you, every dark corner starts to feel occupied. I forced a laugh under my breath, more to steady myself than anything else. "All right, mate?" I muttered like whoever sent it could hear me. Very funny. I looked back down at the phone and typed, "Where exactly?" The reply came almost instantly. "Between the houses. Don't make this difficult." That was the moment something properly shifted in my head. Up until then, I'd been trying to keep everything normal. Wrong address, weird customer, bit of confusion. But that message didn't give me anything to work with. It wasn't helpful. It wasn't polite. It was controlling. Like I was already expected to follow instructions. I glanced toward the narrow passage again. From where I stood, it looked tighter than before, like the hedges had leaned in while I wasn't paying attention. No proper light down there, just darkness swallowing whatever was at the end. The tire tracks I'd noticed earlier cut straight into it, disappearing into black. I should have left. I know that now. Anyone hearing this would probably say the same thing. Get in the car, cancel the job, drive off. Simple. But when you're there, in it, your brain doesn't jump straight to danger. It tries to explain things first. It tries to keep everything reasonable. I told myself it was probably just someone using the back door. Maybe they didn't want to wake someone in the house. Maybe they were renting the place out or living in a converted bit at the back. It happens. I delivered to stranger setups before. Still, I didn't move straight away. Instead, I walked back to my car and opened the driver's door, setting the food on the seat. I kept it open, engine still idling, like I might leave at any second. That was my compromise. Stay close to the car. Don't commit fully. My phone buzzed again. You're wasting time. I actually felt my chest tighten at that. Not in a dramatic way, just pressure, like I was being watched and judged for something small that didn't matter. "I'm coming," I said quietly, again not sure why I was speaking out loud. I picked the bag back up and stepped away from the car, leaving the door open behind me without thinking. I didn't like the idea of it closing. Didn't like the idea of being cut off from it, even by something as simple as a click. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I moved towards the gap. Every step sounded louder than it should have, like it was echoing off the brick walls on either side. The wind dropped suddenly as I got closer, blocked by the houses, and the silence that replaced it felt heavier somehow. I stopped at the entrance to the passage. Up close, it was worse than it had looked from the lane. Narrow enough that I could have touched both walls if I stretched my arms out. Damp bricks, patches of moss, bins pushed up along one side, and those tire marks, deeper here, clearer, cutting right down the middle, like something had forced its way through recently. I hesitated, properly this time. My instincts were screaming at me to turn around, to get back in the car and leave, forget the money, forget the job. But then that other voice kicked in, the one that tells you you're overreacting, that you'll look stupid if this turns out to be nothing. I took a breath and stepped in. The temperature seemed to drop straight away. Not massively, but enough that I noticed it. The kind of cold you feel in enclosed spaces where the air doesn't move properly. My shoulder brushed against one of the bins as I passed, and the lid rattled slightly, making me flinch more than I'd like to admit. "Hello?" I called out, keeping my voice low. "Delivery?" No answer. I walked a bit further, my eyes slowly adjusting to the lack of light. The passage stretched maybe 15-20 meters before opening up into something wider at the back. I could just make out the shape of a small yard or driveway beyond, but the details were swallowed in shadow. My phone buzzed again. "Keep coming." That was it. No explanation, no reassurance, just those two words. At that point, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't normal, not just weird, not just awkward. Something about this was deliberate. I stopped walking. "I'm leaving it here," I said, louder this time. "You can come get it." Silence. Then from somewhere ahead, faint but unmistakable, I heard movement. Not footsteps exactly, more like a shift. Gravel under weight, something or someone adjusting position just out of sight. Every muscle in my body tightened. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm not going any further, all right?" For a second, nothing happened. Then my phone buzzed again. Don't be like that. I don't know why, but that message unsettled me more than the others. It sounded almost disappointed, like I was failing some expectation. I took a step back, another. My heart had started beating faster now, not full panic yet, but getting there. That sick feeling in my stomach was back, stronger than before, twisting tighter with every second I stayed in that space. And then I heard something else. Behind me, a faint sound from the direction of the lane. Not loud, just enough to make me turn my head slightly. At first, I couldn't see anything, just the dark outline of the passage opening back onto the street. But then, slowly, a shape moved across it. A shadow, blocking what little light there was for just a moment before slipping out of view again. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't heard anyone come in behind me, which meant one of two things. Either they'd been there the whole time, or they just arrived without making a sound. I stood frozen, halfway between whatever was in front of me and whatever had just moved behind me, suddenly very aware of how narrow the space was, how trapped I felt without realizing it before. My phone buzzed one last time. This time I didn't even want to look, but I did anyway. You should have used the front door. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of fear before. Not loud, not sudden, just complete. Like everything inside me went cold at once. I was standing there in that narrow passage, one way blocked by whatever was waiting ahead, the other by someone who had just appeared behind me without making a sound. And the worst part was, I still hadn't actually seen either of them properly. That's what got to me. If someone shouts at you, you react. If someone runs at you, you move. But this was quiet, controlled, like I'd already stepped into something I didn't understand. My first instinct was to turn and run back to the car. Just go. Forget everything. But my body didn't move straight away. It locked up for a second, like it was waiting for confirmation, waiting for something obvious enough to justify panic. That confirmation came a second later. A voice, low and calm, spoke from behind me. "Bit late for that now, mate." I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the food. The shape at the entrance of the passage stepped forward just enough for me to see him properly. Same build as the bloke from the shop window, same dark waterproof coat. But up close, he looked worse somehow. Not rough, not drunk, just empty. Like there was nothing behind his eyes apart from focus. He didn't look angry. He didn't look threatening in the obvious way. He just looked certain. "You've come this far," he said, tilting his head slightly, like he was trying to understand me. "Might as well finish it." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat had gone tight, and my brain was trying to catch up with what was happening. I glanced past him, towards the lane, hoping, stupidly, that someone might walk by, that a car might pass, that anything normal might interrupt whatever this was. Nothing. Just empty road and the faint flicker of that broken street lamp. "Listen," I said finally, forcing the words out. "I'm just leaving the food, all right? You can take it, I'm going." I took a step forward, aiming to walk past him. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, like I had every right to be there. He didn't move, not even slightly. I slowed, then stopped about a meter away from him, realizing I wasn't getting through without pushing, and something in me knew that would be a mistake. Behind me, I heard movement again, closer this time. I turned my head just enough to look back over my shoulder. At first, I couldn't see clearly into the darker end of the passage, but then a figure shifted, just a step, maybe two. And I caught the outline of someone standing there, half hidden by the shadow of the wall. Then another, and another. 3 shapes spaced out, not rushing, not speaking, just waiting. My chest tightened so hard it actually hurt. This wasn't random. It wasn't some weird customer or a misunderstanding or someone being difficult about where to leave their food. This was planned. Every second I'd spent convincing myself it was nothing suddenly flipped in my head all at once, and the full weight of it hit me like a drop. I'd walked into this. "Right," I said quietly, more to myself than to them. "Right? Okay." The man in front of me watched me carefully, like he was studying my reaction. "You're all right," he said, almost reassuring. "No one's done anything yet." That word, "yet," sent a jolt straight through me. "What do you want?" I asked. He smiled slightly. Not properly, just enough to show he didn't mind the question. "Keys will do," he said. "Phone as well." Simple, casual, like he was asking for the time. Behind me, one of the others shifted again, and I heard the faint scrape of a shoe against gravel. They were closing in, but slowly. No rush, no panic, like they already knew how this would end. My hands had started shaking now. Not violently, but enough that I could see it. I tightened my grip on the food bag just to give them something to do. "I don't have much cash," I said. It sounded pathetic the moment it came out, but I didn't know what else to say. "We know," he replied. That stopped me cold. "We know how it works," he added, nodding slightly towards my car. "That's why we don't bother with cash." My heart dropped. They'd done this before. That realization hit harder than anything else so far. Not just that I was in trouble, but that I was one of many. Just another person who'd driven down the wrong road at the wrong time, following instructions that led straight here. I looked back again, more directly this time. The three men behind me were clearer now. Different builds, different heights, but all with the same stillness. One had his hands in his pockets. Another was holding something I couldn't quite make out in the dark. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. The man in front of me took a small step closer. "Don't make it worse than it has to be," he said, softer now. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Every instinct in me was screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. Not without pushing past him. Not without turning my back on the others. And that's when something strange happened. For a split second, everything went quiet in my head. No panic, no racing thoughts, just one clear, simple idea. If I stayed where I wasn't getting out. I don't know where that came from. Maybe instinct, maybe luck, but it cut through everything else. I shifted my weight slightly, like I was about to reach into my pocket. The man's eyes flicked down to my hands. That was enough. I moved. Not backwards, not towards them, sideways. I threw the food bag straight at his chest, not hard enough to hurt him, but enough to make him react. As soon as his hands came up, I lunged past him, shoulder first, slamming into him harder than I expected. He stumbled, just a step, but it was enough. I sprinted. I don't remember my feet hitting the ground properly. I just remember the shape of the passage opening up ahead of me and the sudden rush of cold air as I burst out into the lane. Behind me, everything changed. No more quiet, shouting, fast footsteps, gravel spraying under shoes. "Get him!" I didn't look back. I ran straight for the car, which was still sitting there with the driver's door open, engine running like it had been waiting for me. I dove inside, slammed the door, and locked it in one motion, my hands fumbling over themselves. I dropped the keys once, swore, grabbed them again, and jammed them into the ignition even though the engine was already on. A hand hit the side of the car. Hard. Another grabbed at the passenger door handle, yanking it once, twice. I threw the car into gear and slammed my foot down on the accelerator. The tires spun for a second on the wet gravel before catching, and the car lurched forward violently. I didn't stop driving. Not at the end of the road, not at the next junction, not even when I hit the main stretch back towards town where there were actual streetlights and the occasional car. I just kept going, hands locked on the wheel, breathing too fast, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds like I expected headlights to appear behind me at any moment. But nothing did. The road stayed empty, which somehow made it worse, because part of me expected them to follow. That's what made sense. That's what should have happened. 4 men don't set something like that up just to let someone go. But the longer I drove, the clearer it became. They hadn't chased me. They just watched. That thought stuck with me the whole way back into town. By the time I pulled into the petrol station near the bypass, my hands were shaking badly enough that I had to sit there for a minute before I could even open the door. The engine was still running. The radio had come back on at some point, but I hadn't noticed. It was just noise. I turned it off. Silence dropped into the car, thick and sudden, and for a second I just sat there staring at the dashboard, trying to slow my breathing. "You're all right?" I said out loud, though it didn't sound convincing even to me. "You're fine? You're out." But the words didn't settle anything, because I wasn't fine. Not really. My head kept replaying it, how calm they'd been, how organized it felt, how none of them panicked when I ran. Like it didn't matter. Like I'd only interrupted something, not escaped it. I got out of the car eventually and walked inside the petrol station, more for the lights than anything else. The bloke behind the counter barely looked up when I came in. Some late-night radio show was playing quietly, and a couple of lads in work gear were arguing near the drinks fridge about something stupid. Normal. Completely normal. And that made it feel unreal, like I'd imagined the whole thing. I grabbed a bottle of water I didn't even want and took it to the counter just so I had a reason to stand there. The bloke scanned it, told me the price, and I realized I'd been staring at nothing for a few seconds too long. "You all right, mate?" he asked, finally looking up properly. I hesitated. That was the moment, really. The point where I could have said it out loud, explained everything, made it real. But I didn't. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just knackered." He nodded like that made sense, took the money, and went back to whatever he was doing. And just like that, it stayed in my head instead of coming out into the world where someone else could react to it. I went back to the car and sat there again, bottle unopened in my hand. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. For a second, I didn't want to look. I actually considered just throwing it onto the passenger seat and driving home without checking anything. But curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of me. It was the delivery app. The order had been marked as completed. I frowned at the screen, confused. I hadn't delivered anything. I dropped the bag, sure, but not in the right place, not properly. There was no way the system should have registered it like that. Then I noticed something else, a message. Not from the customer, from the system. Customer confirmed successful delivery. Tip processed. My stomach dropped. That didn't make any sense. I hadn't seen anyone take the food. I hadn't handed it over, and yet somehow they'd confirmed it. I scrolled up, my thumb hovering slightly as I checked the previous messages again. Use the side entrance. We can see you. You're wasting time. Don't be like that. You should have used the front door. I read that last one again. You should have used the front door. It hadn't made sense before. Not fully. But now, sitting there under bright petrol station lights, something about it shifted. Because they hadn't tried to stop me at the front. Not really. The lane had been clear when I arrived. No one in sight. No one watching from obvious places. The woman in the house had been frightened, but not of me. Of something else. Of someone else. And I realized, slowly, that the only place they'd actually closed in was the passage behind the houses. That's where they wanted me. Not the front door, the back. I felt a chill run through me, even sitting in the warmth of the car. They hadn't made a mistake. They hadn't been improvising. They'd been guiding me. Every message, every delay, every instruction, it had all been pushing me in one direction. Into that narrow space where I couldn't move properly, couldn't see clearly, couldn't escape easily. And I'd walked into it. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the app. It was Jamie. I answered straight away, glad, desperate even for something normal. "All right," he said. "You still out?" I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out at first. I hadn't realized how much I needed to talk until that moment. "Callum?" "Yeah," I said finally, my voice rough. "Yeah, I'm here." "You sound off. What's up?" I looked out through the windscreen, watching a car pull in and park at the pump opposite me. Completely ordinary, completely safe. "I had a weird one," I said. "Weird how?" I hesitated again, but this time I didn't stop. "Wrong address," I said, but not by accident. There were people there, waiting. There was a pause on the other end. "Waiting for what?" "For me," I said quietly. Another pause. "Right," Jamie said slowly. "You taking the piss?" "I'm not," I snapped, a bit sharper than I meant to. "I'm serious." Silence. Then, "What happened?" I told him. Not perfectly. Not in order. Just everything spilling out. Messages, the passage, the men, how they boxed me in, how I got out. By the time I finished, my hands had started shaking again without me noticing. Jamie didn't speak for a few seconds. "Where are you now?" he asked. "Petrol station near the bypass." "Stay there." "I'm fine," I said quickly. "I got away." "Callum," he said more firmly now. "Stay there." Something in his tone made me listen. "All right. I'm checking something," he added. "Don't go anywhere." The line went quiet for a bit, but he didn't hang up. I sat there, staring at the empty road again, that same uneasy feeling creeping back in now that the adrenaline was wearing off. After about a minute, he spoke again. "Mate, you still on the app?" "Yeah." "Check for new orders." I frowned. "Why?" "Just check." I tapped back into the app, my thumb feeling heavier than it should have. At first, nothing. Then, a new request popped up. Same payout range, same ridiculous tip, different name. But the address, I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was close. Same stretch of road, same end of town. Callum? Jamie said. Yeah, I replied, my voice quieter now. Where's it sending you? I swallowed. Back there. Another pause. Decline it, he said immediately. I didn't move. Callum, decline it. I declined the order. Straight away this time. No hesitation. No second guessing. My thumb hit the screen harder than it needed to. Like that alone would put some distance between me and whatever was still going on out there. But it didn't. The request vanished, replaced by the usual map and that soft, meaningless hum of the app waiting for the next job. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. Done, I said. Good, Jamie replied. But he didn't sound relieved. If anything, he sounded more tense. I'm looking at the back end now. Something's off. What do you mean? These orders, he said. They're not coming through properly. It's like, I don't know, like they're being pushed in manually or something. The system logs are weird. I didn't really understand what that meant, but the way he said it made my stomach turn. You're saying someone's, what? Controlling them? I'm saying they shouldn't look like this, he replied. Same payout pattern, same area, weird instructions. Callum, I think someone's messing with the app. I leaned back in the seat, staring up through the windscreen at the harsh white lights above the petrol pumps. That explained too much. How they knew where I was, how the messages came so quickly, how they kept trying to pull drivers to the same place. It wasn't random, it was organized. And suddenly, the idea that they just let me go didn't feel like luck anymore. It felt like choice. Jamie, I said slowly, what if they don't need to chase anyone? What do you mean? What if they just wait for the next one? Silence. Then quietly, yeah. That one word sat heavy between us. Because that was the truth of it, wasn't it? They didn't care about me specifically. I wasn't special. I was just there. Just another name on a screen, another set of headlights turning into the wrong lane at the wrong time. And when I didn't work out, they moved on. I felt something twist in my chest at that. Not fear exactly, something worse. The idea that this wasn't a one-off, that it was happening again, maybe already had, maybe would again tonight, tomorrow, whenever someone else accepted the wrong job and followed the same instructions I did. What about the police, I asked. I'm calling them now, Jamie said. You should too. Tell them everything. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, I will. We hung up. For a moment, I just sat there again, staring at my phone. Then I dialed. It felt strange explaining it, saying it out loud properly this time. The operator asked the usual questions. Location, what happened, whether anyone was hurt. I told them as clearly as I could, trying not to sound like I was exaggerating, even though every part of me still felt like I was. They said they'd send someone to speak to me. So I waited. The petrol station didn't change. People came and went. A van pulled in, filled up, left. Someone bought cigarettes. Someone else argued over a card payment. The world carried on like nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still part of it somehow. Like even sitting there under bright lights, I hadn't really left whatever that was. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. Just one car, 2 officers. One of them, a woman, P.C. Pike, she said her name was, did most of the talking. Calm, steady, the kind of voice that makes you feel like things are under control even when they're not. I told her everything again. Slower this time, more detail. She listened carefully, asked a few questions, took notes. Did you get a good look at any of them? She asked. Not properly, I admitted. One of them maybe, the one at the front, but it was dark. Vehicle? Didn't see clearly. Just a car blocking the lane. Dark, maybe a hatchback. She nodded, jotting it down. And you said they were directing you through the app? Yeah. She exchanged a look with the other officer at that, something quick and unreadable. We've had a couple of similar reports, she said after a moment. That made my stomach drop again. Similar how? Suspicious activity involving delivery drivers, she replied. Incorrect addresses, attempts to redirect them. Nothing quite like what you've described tonight, but enough to notice a pattern. A pattern. That word again. It wasn't just me. It had never just been me. Has anyone? I started, then stopped. I didn't know how to finish that question. Got hurt? Disappeared? Nothing confirmed, she said, like she knew what I was asking without me saying it. but we're looking into it. That didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made it worse, because it meant they didn't know how far it went either. After they finished taking my statement, they told me I could head home, but to contact them immediately if anything else happened. PC Pike gave me a look before leaving. Not worried exactly, but serious enough that it stayed with me. "Don't take any more jobs tonight," she said. "And if you get anything that feels off, don't engage. Just report it." "I won't," I said, and I meant it. I waited until they left, then sat there for another few minutes, letting the engine run, watching the empty road ahead. Eventually, I drove home. The streets looked different now. Not in any obvious way. Same houses, same streetlights, same parked cars. But every shadow felt deeper. Every quiet stretch felt like it could be hiding something. I kept checking my mirrors the whole way. Nothing followed. Still, I didn't relax. When I got to my flat, I locked the door behind me and checked it twice. Then I checked the windows, then the door again. It felt stupid, but I couldn't help it. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, phone in my hand, not really doing anything, just listening. The building was quiet. Someone upstairs moved around for a bit, then stopped. Pipes clicked faintly in the walls, normal sounds, safe sounds. I told myself that over and over. It's over. You're home. It's done. But something about that didn't sit right. Because they hadn't chased me. They hadn't panicked. They hadn't even tried that hard to stop me once I broke through. They just watched. And that thought stayed with me longer than anything else. A few days passed after that. I didn't do any night deliveries, didn't even open the app. Jamie said the company was investigating unusual activity, but nothing official came out of it. No warnings, no alerts, just quiet, too quiet. Then, about a week later, I got a message. Not through the app, just a normal text, unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was short, only one line. No greeting, no explanation, just, "You learn quickly." I stared at it for a long time. My first thought was to block the number. My second was to call the police again. But I didn't do either straight away because something else had settled in my head. I thought staying in would help. That if I just kept my head down for a few days, avoided the app, stuck to normal routines, everything would settle back into place. And for the most part, it did, on the surface anyway. I went to college, did my shifts at the off license, nodded through conversations like nothing had changed. But inside, it hadn't gone anywhere. If anything, it had sharpened. Every time my phone buzzed, I checked it slower than I used to. Every time I walked home late, I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. Cars parked with engines still warm, curtains slightly open, the way footsteps sound different when they're behind you instead of in front. I didn't say any of that out loud, but Jamie noticed something was off. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" he said one evening while we were sat upstairs in his flat above the takeaway, both of us half watching some rubbish on TV. "I told you, it's done," I replied. "Yeah," he said, not convinced. "That's why you keep checking your phone like it's about to bite you." I didn't answer that, because he wasn't wrong. The truth was, I kept expecting something else to happen. Another message, another order, something to prove that what happened that night wasn't just a one-off. And part of me, this stupid, stubborn part, wanted to understand it. "Have you heard anything else?" I asked after a while. "From who?" "The police or the company. Anyone." Jamie shook his head. "Nothing official, just bits." "What kind of bits?" He hesitated, then muted the TV. "One of the other drivers came in yesterday," he said. "Bloke named Darren. Does late shifts mostly. Said he had a weird job a couple nights ago." My chest tightened slightly. "Weird how?" "Same sort of thing," Jamie replied. "High payout, small order, instructions that didn't make sense. Told him not to use the front, said the address was wrong when he got there." "What did he do?" "Left." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Did anything happen?" "He said he saw someone watching him from across the road," Jamie added. "Didn't stick around long enough to find out more." That was enough. It wasn't just me. Again, why isn't anyone saying anything about it? I asked. Why isn't the company warning people? Jamie gave a small, humorless laugh. "Because there's no proof, mate. Just stories. Drivers get weird jobs all the time. You know that." "Yeah, but not like this," he shrugged. "Try telling that to someone who's never been out there at 1 a.m. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. That was the problem, wasn't it? On paper, it didn't sound that bad. No one got hurt, no one got taken. Just a few strange orders, some confusing directions, maybe a couple of dodgy blokes hanging around where they shouldn't be. Easy to ignore, easy to explain away, unless you'd been there. Unless you'd stood in that narrow space with nowhere to go and realized too late that someone else had planned your entire route before you even accepted the job. I keep thinking about that message, I said quietly. What one? The last one, before I ran. Jamie looked over at me. What about it? You should have used the front door, I said, repeating it slowly. It doesn't make sense. Sounds like they were just messing with you. No, I shook my head. That's the thing. It felt specific, like they meant it. He frowned slightly. How? I sat up a bit, trying to explain something that didn't fully make sense even in my own head. They wanted me in that passage, I said. Everything pointed there. The messages, the instructions, even the way they were positioned. But that last one, it sounded like I'd done something wrong. Wrong how? Like I'd broken the plan. Jamie didn't say anything to that. And the more I thought about it, the worse it felt. Because what if I had? What if I wasn't supposed to go to the front door at all? What if that's why the woman looked so scared, because she'd seen this happen before? Or knew what was meant to happen next? A cold feeling settled in my chest. Jamie, I said slowly, what if the front door wasn't for the delivery? He looked at me, confused. Then what was it for? I hesitated. I don't know, I admitted, but it felt like I interrupted something. The room went quiet after that. Not tense, just heavy, like we were both thinking the same thing but didn't want to say it out loud. After a minute, Jamie sighed and grabbed his phone. I'm checking something, he said. What? The system logs again. Those orders. You already looked at them. Yeah, and they didn't make sense then either. He scrolled for a bit, tapping through screens I didn't understand. I watched him, trying to read his expression. At first, nothing changed. Then he paused. That's weird. What? These requests, he said slowly. They're not coming from a normal account. What do you mean? They don't stay active, he explained. They pop up, get accepted or declined, and then they're gone. No proper history. No stable customer profile. So fake? More like temporary, he said. Like someone's creating them just long enough to send them out, then wiping them. I felt my stomach turn again. They can do that? They shouldn't be able to, he replied. Not without access. Access. That word again. Same as before. Same idea. This wasn't random. It wasn't just people standing around waiting for deliveries. It was connected to the system itself. Jamie, I said more quietly now, what if they can see where drivers are? He didn't answer straight away. Then slowly he nodded. If they've got the right kind of access, yeah, they could. That changed everything. Because it meant they didn't just wait in one place. They could pick, choose, watch someone move across the map, wait for the right moment, then send the order, guide them, control where they ended up. I felt a chill run through me that had nothing to do with the cold outside. They knew where I was before I even got there, I said. Looks like it, Jamie replied. And they knew I'd stopped at the wrong house. Yeah, Jamie didn't get far on the call before he stopped talking. Not because anyone hung up on him, because something on his screen made him go quiet. Callum, he said slowly, lowering the phone from his ear but not ending the call. There's another one. My stomach dropped instantly. Another what? Order, he said. Just came through. I walked over, standing behind him, looking down at the tablet on the desk. At first, it didn't seem any different from the others. Same layout, same little map, same estimated payout. Then I saw it. High tip, small order, same area. Not exactly the same road as mine, but close enough that it didn't matter. Who's got it? I asked. Jamie tapped the screen, bringing up the assignment. Driver named Nadia Kemp. I didn't recognize the name. Is she local? I said. Yeah, he replied. Seen her a few times. Scooter driver mostly. Does late shifts like you used to? Used to. That word hit harder than it should have. What time did it come in? Just now, he said. Like seconds ago. That meant she was probably on her way to the restaurant. Or worse, already had the food. Can you contact her? I asked. I'm trying. He tapped through the system again, pulling up what looked like a contact option. It rang for a bit, then cut off. No answer. Try again. He did. Same result. I felt that same tight pressure building in my chest again. Only this time, it wasn't just about me. She doesn't know, I said. She has no idea. Jamie didn't reply, because he knew I was right. To her, it was just another job, another late-night order with a good payout. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, not yet. Where's it sending her? I asked. Jamie zoomed in on the map. She's picking up from a place near the marina, then heading out. He stopped mid-sentence. I said, that's not right. What? He pointed at the screen. The drop-off pin. It's moving. I frowned. What do you mean moving? Look. I leaned closer. At first, I thought it was just the usual lag you get with maps, but it wasn't. The marker, the exact location of the delivery, shifted slightly. Not a glitch, not jumping randomly. It was adjusting, sliding a few meters, then settling again, like someone was repositioning it in real time. My stomach turned. They're doing it again, I said. Yeah, Jamie replied quietly, and she's heading straight into it. We both stood there for a second, like watching the tiny icon that represented Nadia's scooter begin moving along the road, completely unaware of what was waiting ahead. Call her again, I said. I am. Still no answer. I didn't think. Didn't weigh it up properly. I just grabbed my keys off the side and headed for the door. Where are you going? Jamie called after me. Out, I said. We can't just sit here. Callum, she's going to the same place. He followed me into the hallway, still holding the tablet. We don't know that for sure. It's close enough, I snapped. And if it's not, then fine. But if it is, I didn't finish. Didn't need to. He knew what I meant. There was a brief pause, then he swore under his breath. All right, he said. I'm coming. We didn't waste time after that. Down the stairs, out into the cold, straight to my car. The air hit hard again, sharp and damp, and the wind had picked up since earlier. I could hear it whistling between the buildings as we got in. Jamie climbed into the passenger seat, tablet still in his hands. Where is she now? I asked, starting the engine. Heading towards the marina still, he said. Probably picking up the food. Right. I pulled out onto the road faster than I should have, tires skidding slightly on the wet surface before gripping. Call the police again, I said. I am, he replied, already dialing. I focused on driving, but my mind was racing. This wasn't the same as before. Before, it had just been me, my situation, my escape. Now I knew what it was, and I knew what could happen if someone didn't get out in time. Jamie spoke quickly into the phone, explaining the situation again. New order, same pattern, another driver heading into it right now. I could hear the operator asking questions, trying to piece it together. Meanwhile, I pushed the car harder than I normally would, cutting through the quieter roads to avoid traffic lights, heading towards the marina where Nadia was likely collecting the order. She's picked it up, Jamie said suddenly. How do you know? Her icon's moving again. She's left the restaurant. Where's she going? He zoomed in further. My grip tightened on the wheel. She's heading north, he said. Towards the same area? Yeah, but not exactly the same route as you took. That didn't make me feel better. If anything, it made it worse, because it meant they were adapting, changing things, not just repeating the same setup, but adjusting it each time. How far out, I asked. 10 minutes, maybe less. Can we get there before her? Jamie didn't answer straight away. Maybe, he said. That wasn't good enough. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The street started to thin out as we moved away from the center of town. Fewer houses, wider gaps between streetlights. The familiar feeling from earlier crept back in, the sense of leaving something safe behind and heading somewhere quieter, more exposed. Call her again, I said. Jamie did. This time it rang longer. For a second, I thought she might actually pick up. Then it cut off again. Nothing, he said. Try messaging. He typed quickly. No response. I glanced at the tablet for a moment, just long enough to see her icon continuing along the route, steady and unaware. She's not stopping, I said. No, of course she wasn't. Why would she? To her, it was just another delivery, another job, another normal night. Where exactly is it taking her? I asked. Jamie hesitated. Then he turned the screen slightly so the road narrowed the further out we went. Streetlights thinned until there were gaps of pure darkness between them, and the houses dropped away behind us, replaced by stretches of open ground and broken fencing. The wind sounded louder out here, pushing against the car in uneven bursts, and every now and then, loose gravel pinged against the underside as I drove too fast over the rougher patches. Neither of us spoke much. Jamie kept his eyes locked on the tablet, tracking Nadia's position, while I focused on the road ahead, trying to shave seconds off wherever I could without completely losing control. "How far now?" I asked. "Couple of minutes," he said. "She's almost there." That word hit hard. There. I didn't need to ask what it meant. The entrance to the old holiday park came into view just after that, a broken metal gate hanging slightly off one hinge, the faded sign above it barely readable anymore. The letters had peeled over time, but you could still make out the name if you knew what it used to say. Seabreeze Holiday Park. I slowed slightly as I turned in, more out of instinct than caution. The headlights swept across rows of dark shapes, chalets, I realized after a second, sitting in uneven lines, their windows black, some boarded, some just empty. The paths between them were overgrown, weeds pushing up through cracked concrete, and the whole place had that abandoned feel you only get when something's been left too long. "Jesus," Jamie muttered. "Where is she?" I asked. He leaned forward slightly, adjusting the brightness on the screen. "She stopped," he said. "Where?" "Near the back, I think." That's not good. No, I drove further in, tires crunching over loose stones and bits of debris. The car's headlights cut through the darkness, but only in narrow strips. Everything outside that beam felt too close, like the trees and buildings were pressing in just beyond what I could see. "Left," Jamie said suddenly. "Take that path." I turned, the car jolting slightly as we hit a rougher track. The trees thickened here, tall pines lining both sides, their branches blocking what little light there was from the sky. The air felt different too, colder, heavier. Then we saw it. A scooter, lying on its side near the edge of the path, half hidden by long grass. I braked hard. "That's hers," Jamie said. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. We both knew. I threw the car into park and got out immediately, the cold air hitting me like a wall again. The silence out here was worse than anywhere else. No distant traffic, no voices, nothing but the wind moving through the trees and the faint ticking of the car engine cooling behind me. "Oi!" I called out louder than I meant to. "Hello?" No answer. Jamie came around to my side, still holding the tablet, but his focus had shifted now. "She's not moving," he said quietly. I walked over to the scooter, my shoes sinking slightly into the damp ground. Up close, it looked worse. The delivery bag was still attached, slightly open, the food container inside untouched. One of the mirrors had snapped off. "Something happened here," I said. "Yeah." I crouched slightly, noticing marks in the dirt, scuffed lines like someone had struggled or been dragged a short distance. Not clear enough to make out properly, but enough to tell me this wasn't just a fall. "Call her name," Jamie said. I nodded. "Nadia," I shouted. "Nadia, can you hear me?" The sound carried further this time, echoing faintly between the chalets and trees. Then something answered. Not clearly, not words, just a sound, faint, distant, but definitely not the wind. I froze. "Did you hear that?" Jamie whispered. "Yeah." We both turned towards where it had come from, deeper into the park, past the trees, where the paths split into narrower walkways between the old buildings. "Say it again," Jamie muttered under his breath, almost like he didn't believe it. But it didn't come again. Just silence. Heavy, waiting silence. I felt that same sick drop in my stomach as before, only worse now because I knew what it meant. She was here, somewhere, and she wasn't alone. "Police said they're on their way," Jamie said quietly, as if speaking too loudly might carry. "How long?" "Don't know. 10 minutes, maybe." 10 minutes. That felt like too long. Way too long. "We can't just stand here," I said. Jamie hesitated. "They told us to wait. And if she's hurt," I snapped. "If she needs help now?" He didn't answer, because he knew. Same as me. I looked back at the scooter one more time, then towards the darker part of the park where the sound had come from. My instincts were screaming at me to get back in the car, to stay somewhere visible, to wait for people who actually knew what they were doing. But that other feeling was stronger. The one that said I couldn't just leave someone there. "Stay close," I said. Jamie swore quietly under his breath, but followed. We moved slowly off the main path, stepping between the trees and onto one of the narrower walkways. The ground was uneven, patches of mud and broken concrete making every step feel uncertain. The chalets here were closer together. Some had doors hanging open. Others were sealed shut. One had its window smashed completely, glass scattered across the ground like it had been left that way for years. "Nadia?" I called again, quieter this time. Nothing. We kept moving, further in. The air felt thicker the deeper we went, like the trees were blocking everything out, the wind, the sound, even the light. My phone signal dropped to nothing, and I noticed Jamie glancing down at the tablet, frowning. No signal? He muttered. It's not updating. Of course it wasn't. That would have been too easy. We reached a slightly wider clearing between a few chalets, and that's when I saw it. A small building at the back. Different from the others. Bigger. Older. A cottage, maybe. Its front door was slightly open, a thin line of darkness cutting through the faint gray of the wood. I stopped walking. That wasn't on the map, Jamie said quietly. No. The door creaked slightly as the wind shifted. Then, another sound, closer this time. A soft thud from inside. Jamie looked at me. I looked back at him. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew. That's where it was coming from. And whatever was happening out here was happening in there. We didn't move straight away. Just stood there, staring at that half-open door like it might shift on its own if we looked long enough. The wind pushed through the trees behind us, low and steady. But out here in the clearing, it felt strangely muted, like the air around the cottage was holding everything in. You hear that again? Jamie whispered. I nodded. The thud hadn't been loud, but it had been deliberate. Not something falling, not the wind, something inside. I took a step forward before I'd fully decided to. Callum, Jamie started. I know, I said quietly. Just stay behind me. I don't know why I said that. It wasn't like I had any idea what I was doing, but it felt wrong to just stand there while someone might be in trouble a few meters away. We moved slowly towards the door. Every step felt louder than it should have, the crunch of grit and broken glass underfoot echoing more than it had any right to. My eyes stayed fixed on the gap in the doorway, half expecting someone to step out before we got there. No one did. By the time we reached the front, I could see properly inside. A narrow hallway, poorly lit, if you could even call it that. It wasn't proper lighting, more like a faint glow coming from deeper in the building, barely enough to outline shapes. Old furniture, a table on its side, something hanging from the wall at an angle. It didn't look abandoned. That was the worst part. It looked used, recently. I pushed the door slightly with my hand. It creaked open further. Hello? I called out, my voice lower now. Nadia? Nothing. Then a sound, clearer this time, from further inside. A muffled voice. Jamie inhaled sharply behind me. That's her. It had to be. I stepped inside. The air hit me straight away. Stale, damp, mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. Not rot. Not exactly. Just wrong. Hello? I said again, louder now. We're here to help. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then a voice, faint but urgent. Hello? My chest tightened. Nadia? I said. A pause. Then louder this time. Help! The sound cut off suddenly, like something or someone had stopped it. I froze. Jamie grabbed my arm lightly. Did you hear that? Yeah. And that was when my phone rang. Loud. Too loud. The sudden noise made both of us jump. I fumbled it out of my pocket, heart racing, and for a split second I thought it might be the police. It wasn't. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. It kept ringing. Jamie looked at me. Answer it. I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to. But something else, something colder, told me I already knew who it was. I pressed accept. Hello? I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the faint sound of breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Calm. Familiar. You came back. My stomach dropped. It was him. The same man from the passage. I didn't say anything. Didn't trust myself to. You really shouldn't have done that, he continued almost casually. Makes things complicated. What do you want? I asked, forcing the words out. A soft chuckle. You already know that. Behind me, Jamie shifted slightly, trying to listen. Where is she? I said. Another pause. Then, close. That single word sent a chill straight through me. I glanced deeper into the cottage towards where we'd heard her voice. You're watching us, I said. Of course, he replied. My grip tightened on the phone. How? That's not important. It is to me. Another small pause. Then, almost amused. You notice more than most. That made my chest tighten again, because it sounded like a compliment, and that made it worse. What do you want with her? I asked. No answer. Is she hurt? Still nothing. Then, she's fine, he said, for now. The way he said it made my stomach turn. What does that mean? It means, he replied calmly, you're early. I frowned. Early for what? He didn't answer straight away. And in that silence, something clicked in my head. The orders, the timing. The way they guided people. They weren't just grabbing whoever showed up, they were setting something up. Jamie, I whispered, covering the phone slightly. They're not finished. What? He said quietly. They're waiting for something. What do you mean? I didn't get a chance to explain, because the voice came back. You should leave, the man said. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. More like advice. Not happening, I said. A slight sigh came through the phone. I was hoping you'd say that, he replied. That sent a sharp jolt of fear through me, because it sounded genuine, like he wanted us there. Why? I asked. No answer. Instead, something else happened. From deeper inside the cottage, a sudden crash, loud, violent, followed by a sharp cry. Nadia. Jamie flinched. That's her! I turned towards the sound instantly, but before I could move, the voice on the phone spoke again. Careful, he said. I stopped. What? You go rushing in like that? He continued, calm as ever. You might miss something behind you. My heart skipped. Slowly, very slowly, I turned my head, back towards the doorway, towards the darkness outside. For a split second, I didn't see anything. Then, a shape moved, right at the edge of the trees, watching, waiting, not alone. My grip on the phone tightened. They're here, I said quietly. A soft laugh came through the line. They've always been there. And just like that, the call ended. For a second, neither of us moved. The silence after the call ended felt heavier than anything that had come before it, like the air itself had thickened, pressing in from every side. They've always been there. That line kept echoing in my head. Not coming, not arriving, already there, waiting. Callum, Jamie said quietly. I know, I replied, though I didn't, not fully, but I knew enough. We weren't alone. We hadn't been since we got here. I looked back towards the trees again. The shape I'd seen was gone, or hidden. I couldn't tell which was worse. How many do you think? Jamie asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't want to guess. Another sound came from inside the cottage, closer now. A dull thump, then a scrape. Nadia. That snapped something in me. They're trying to keep us out here, I said. What? The call, I replied quickly. The noise outside, it's all to distract us. Jamie hesitated. Or it's to trap us. Either way, I said, she's in there. He looked at me for a second longer, then nodded. Right. We stepped fully into the cottage. The door creaked slightly behind us as it moved in the wind, but neither of us turned back to close it. I didn't want to. Something about that felt like cutting off the only exit we had. The hallway stretched ahead, narrow and cluttered. Broken furniture, scattered rubbish, things that had clearly been moved around recently. Not abandoned, used. That thought came back again, stronger this time. Used by them. Stay close, I muttered. Jamie didn't reply, but I could hear him right behind me. We moved slowly down the hall, following the faint light that spilled out from a room further in. The smell got worse the deeper we went. Damp, stale, mixed with something chemical. Not strong, but enough to make me uneasy. Then we reached the first room. Kitchen, maybe? Or what used to be one. The door was half open. I pushed it gently. It swung inward with a soft creak. The sight inside made my chest tighten. It wasn't just a ruined room. It was set up, deliberately. A small table stood in the center, covered in scattered items. Phones, wallets, car keys, different types, different colors. None of them new. Confiscated. Taken. Callum, Jamie whispered. I see it. On the wall behind the table, there was something else. A board, white, cracked at the edges, but still usable. And on it, names, times, notes, delivery apps listed down one side. Days of the week across the top. Routes, patterns, peak hours. Some names circled, some crossed out. It looked like a timetable, or worse, a system. They've been tracking drivers, Jamie said, his voice barely above a breath. Not just tracking, I replied. Planning. Every move, every route, every moment someone would be alone on the road. They know everything, Jamie added. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. They know enough. That was worse somehow, because it meant they didn't need full control, just enough information to predict where someone would be and when they'd be vulnerable. Another noise, from further inside, a faint knock, 3 quick taps, then silence. We both turned towards the hallway. That's her, Jamie said. Yeah. I stepped out of the kitchen, moving deeper into the cottage. The corridor branched slightly ahead, one path leading towards what looked like a back room, the other towards a narrow staircase going up. The knocking came again. From the left. Back room. I moved faster this time, no hesitation. Jamie followed close behind. The door at the end of the corridor was shut. That alone made it stand out. Everything else in the cottage had been open, broken, or half hanging. This door was intact, closed properly, locked. I grabbed the handle and tried it. Didn't move. "Nadia?" I called. A pause. Then faintly, "Help?" Relief hit me for a split second. She was alive. "Stand back," I said. Jamie didn't argue. I stepped back, then kicked the door hard, right near the lock. It didn't give. "Again," Jamie said. I kicked it a second time, harder. The wood cracked slightly. A third kick. The lock snapped. The door burst open. Inside, Nadia was on the floor, pushed up against the wall, her wrists tied with what looked like an extension cable. Her face was pale, eyes wide, breathing fast. Hey, it's all right," I said quickly, stepping towards her. "We've got you." She flinched at first, then recognized us, or at least recognized we weren't them. "Oh God," she whispered. "Thank God." Jamie moved in to help, crouching down and starting to untie the cable around her wrists. "What happened?" he asked. She started, her voice shaking. "They told me to come round the back. I thought it was just—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "Someone grabbed me," she finished quietly. I clenched my jaw. Same as before. Same setup, different place. "They're still here," she added quickly. "I heard them moving." "I know," I said, because I could hear it too. Now that we were inside the sounds were clearer, faint footsteps above us, slow, deliberate. I looked up instinctively. The ceiling creaked slightly. "They're upstairs." For a second, none of us moved. Not because we didn't want to, but because every instinct was suddenly pulling in two directions at once. Run, or stay still. The problem was, both felt wrong. The hallway stretched out ahead of us, leading back towards the front door, but now it didn't feel like an exit. It felt exposed, too open, like we'd be stepping straight into something we couldn't see yet. Behind us, the small room where we'd found Nadia felt safer, but only just. It was a dead end, no way out except the way we came in. And above us, silence, that heavy, deliberate silence. "They're waiting," Nadia whispered, her voice shaking. "I know," I said. Jamie tightened his grip slightly on her arm to steady her. "We don't go upstairs," he muttered. "We don't even look up there. We just get out." That made sense. Simple, logical. But the problem was, nothing about this had followed logic so far. And the longer we stood there, the worse it felt. Because they weren't rushing. They weren't shouting. They weren't even trying to scare us. They were just letting it play out, like they'd already decided how it would end. "Callum," Jamie said quietly, "we need to go." I nodded. We started moving down the hallway. Slow at first, then a bit faster. Nadia between us, both of us half supporting her as we headed back towards the front. The house creaked slightly as we moved, floorboards shifting under our weight, every small sound echoing more than it should have. Halfway down the corridor, something dropped upstairs. A heavy thud. Not accidental, not random, intentional. We all froze again. My heart slammed hard against my chest. "Keep going," Jamie whispered urgently. But I didn't move straight away, because something about that sound didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a signal, a message. "We're still here." I forced myself forward again, step by step, closer to the front, closer to the door. And then I saw it. Something on the wall, just before the hallway opened back into the entrance. I hadn't noticed it before. A row of hooks, old, rusted, fixed into the wood, and hanging from them, delivery bags, different colors, different companies, some torn, some stained, some still zipped shut. My stomach dropped. There were at least 8, maybe more. And below them, on a small shelf, keys, dozens of them, car keys, fobs, all mixed together, collected, kept. I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. "They've been doing this for a while," Jamie said quietly. I nodded, couldn't speak. Because this was proof, not just of what they were doing, but how long it had been happening. Nadia stared at the wall, her face pale. "Oh God," she whispered. A faint sound came from upstairs again. This time, closer. Not a thud, not a drop. Footsteps, slow, measured, moving towards the top of the stairs. We all turned instinctively. The staircase was just visible from where we stood now. Dark, narrow, the top half swallowed in shadow. And then a shape appeared, at the top step, still, watching. I couldn't see his face properly, just the outline. Tall, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted down like he was studying us, the same way the man in the passage had. My breath caught. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there. And somehow that was worse than anything else so far. Because it felt like he wasn't reacting to us. He was expecting us. Like this part, This exact moment had always been coming. Don't look at him, Jamie whispered under his breath. Just keep moving. I nodded slowly, but I couldn't quite pull my eyes away. Not fully, because there was something wrong, something I couldn't place at first. Then I saw it, in his hand. Something small, rectangular, reflecting a faint bit of light from below. A phone. He was holding a phone. And as I realized that, the screen lit up, bright enough to cut through the dark. For just a second, I saw it clearly, the delivery app interface. My chest tightened violently. He wasn't just watching us. He was watching through the system, tracking, following, choosing. The same way they'd chosen me. The same way they'd chosen Nadia. The man tilted his head slightly. Then, very slowly, he smiled. Not wide, not exaggerated, just enough to make it unmistakable. Recognition. Not of who I was, but of what I was. Another one. Another person who'd stepped into something they weren't meant to understand. Move, Jamie hissed. That broke it. I tore my eyes away and forced myself forward. We pushed towards the front door, faster now, not caring about noise anymore, not caring about anything except getting out. Behind us, the floor above creaked. Footsteps. Faster now. Coming down the stairs. My heart jumped into my throat. Go! I shouted. We reached the door. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't open. For a split second, my brain didn't process it. I pulled again, harder. Nothing. Locked. It hadn't been locked before. I knew it hadn't. Callum, Jamie snapped. I know. I twisted the handle again, panic rising fast now, my hands slipping slightly. Behind us, the footsteps hit the bottom of the stairs. Close. Too close. I didn't turn around. Everything narrowed. That's the only way I can explain it. Not physically. The room was still the same size, the doorway still open, but in my head, everything locked into one thing. Get out. No more second guessing. No more trying to understand what they wanted. Just move. Back, Jamie snapped, pulling Nadia with him as the figure outside the door stepped further into view. I grabbed the nearest thing without even thinking, a loose bit of wood from the broken frame, and swung it instinctively as the man came through the doorway. It didn't hit cleanly, but it hit enough. He flinched, stepping back just slightly, more surprised than hurt. And that was all we needed. Go, I shouted. Jamie didn't hesitate. He shoved Nadia forward, pushing her past me as we burst through the doorway together, shoulder checking past the man before he could recover. Cold air hit us like a shock. The clearing outside felt darker than before, like the light had drained out of it while we were inside. The trees loomed closer now, tighter, shadows thicker between them. Left, Jamie yelled. We ran, not in any organized way, just instinct. Away from the cottage, away from the shapes behind us, away from the feeling of being boxed in. Branches scratched at my arms as we cut between the trees, the ground uneven underfoot, mud and loose debris making every step uncertain. Behind us, voices, not shouting, just talking. Low, controlled, like they weren't worried. That was the worst part. They're not chasing, Nadia gasped, stumbling slightly as we pulled her along. They are, I said, just not like before, because I could hear it. Footsteps, multiple, not running, walking, keeping pace. Why? Jamie muttered. Why aren't they just... Because they don't need to, I cut in. The realization hit me as I said it. Same as before, same pattern. They didn't rush, they didn't panic. They moved when they needed to, closed in slowly, left you just enough space to think you could get out. And then, that space disappeared. We need the car, Jamie said. Yeah. But even as he said it, I knew. We weren't going the right way. Everything out here looked the same. Rows of broken chalets, overgrown paths, gaps between trees that all led to more of the same. No clear direction, no obvious route back. Where is it? Nadia said, her voice shaking. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. And that was the moment the panic really set in. Not the sudden loud kind, the deep sinking kind, the kind that tells you you've already made a mistake you can't undo. They moved the path, Jamie said suddenly. What, the map, the layout, it's not matching what we saw coming in, he said quickly. We turned left, then right, then this should lead back to the main track. But it doesn't, I said. No, of course it didn't, because they picked this place for a reason, not just because it was empty, but because it was confusing, easy to lose direction, easy to trap someone without them realizing how far they'd gone in. They know this place, I said. Yeah, Jamie replied, and we don't. A branch snapped somewhere behind us, closer now. They're gaining, Nadia whispered. I didn't look back, didn't want to see how close they were. Just keep moving, I said. Don't stop. We pushed forward again, faster this time, ignoring the uneven ground, ignoring the way the trees seemed to close in tighter the further we went. Then, Nadia stumbled, hard. Her foot caught on something buried in the grass, and she went down with a sharp cry, pulling Jamie off balance with her. "Shit!" he cursed, trying to catch her. I turned immediately, grabbing her arm and hauling her back up. "You all right?" I asked. "I think so," she said, but her voice broke slightly. She wasn't, not fully, and that slowed us down, even for a second, and that second was enough. A hand shot out from the darkness to my right, fast, grabbing the back of Nadia's hoodie. She screamed, "Get off her!" I shouted, lunging forward. I didn't think, didn't hesitate. I swung the bit of wood again, harder this time, aiming blindly at the shape in the dark. It connected, a dull, solid impact. The grip loosened. Nadia tore free, stumbling forward as Jamie pulled her away. I didn't stop. I swung again, and again, until the shape retreated back into the darkness between the trees. "Move," Jamie yelled. We ran, properly now, no looking back, no slowing down, just running. My chest burned, lungs tightening with every breath, legs starting to ache, but I didn't care, because now they were closer. No more distance, no more patience. We'd broken whatever rhythm they had. And that made it worse, because now they were reacting. Branches snapped behind us again. Faster, more urgent. "They're coming!" Nadia cried. "I know!" We pushed harder. Then, through the trees ahead, light, faint, but there. "Callum," Jamie pointed. "There!" I saw it too, a break in the tree line, the edge of the park. "Go!" I shouted. We burst through the last stretch of trees and stumbled out onto a wider track. Gravel, open space, and beyond that, the main road. Relief hit me so hard it almost made my legs give out. "We made it," Nadia started, then stopped because something was wrong. The road was there, the way out, but no car. My car wasn't there. The spot where we'd left it empty. My stomach dropped. I muttered, "What?" Jamie said, "It's gone." For a second, neither of them reacted. Then, "Gone?" Jamie repeated. "They moved it," I said, my voice low, hollow. For a split second, I just stood there staring at the empty space where my car should have been. It didn't feel real, like I'd somehow misremembered where I parked or we'd come out the wrong side. But I knew we hadn't. I knew exactly where I'd left it. Engine running, door open, and now, nothing. "They've moved it," Jamie said again, more firmly this time, like saying it out loud made it easier to process. I shook my head slowly. "No, they didn't just move it." "What do you mean?" "They planned it," I said. "Same as everything else." That was the truth of it. We'd been thinking in steps, get in, find Nadia, get out. But they'd been thinking further ahead than that, always. They didn't need to chase us if they could just remove the exit. Behind us, the trees shifted again. Closer, too close. "Callum," Nadia said, her voice tight with panic. "What do we do?" I forced myself to look away from the road and back at them. "Think. Just think." "Not the road," I said quickly. "What?" "They'll expect us to run straight out," I explained. "That's where they want us." Jamie glanced back at the tree line. "Then where?" I scanned the area. To the left, more trees. To the right, a broken stretch of fencing, and beyond that, a wide open patch of ground sloping slightly downhill. The remains of what used to be a recreation area, I think. It looked flooded in places, pools of water reflecting the faint sky above. Not ideal, but not obvious either. "There," I said, pointing, "through there." Jamie followed my gaze. "That's a mess," he said. "Yeah," I replied, "which means they won't expect it. Or at least I hope they wouldn't." Another sound from behind. A voice this time. "Don't run that way." Calm, clear, too close. I didn't turn, didn't want to see which one it was. "Now," I shouted. We ran, not towards the road, not towards safety, but sideways, cutting across the uneven ground, pushing through the broken fence where the wire had already been bent out of shape. It snagged at my jacket as I forced through, scraping along my side, but I didn't stop. The ground beyond was worse than it looked. Waterlogged, soft. Each step sank slightly, mud sucking at my shoes, slowing me down. "Keep going," I called, grabbing Nadia's arm again as she slipped. Behind us, confusion. Not shouting, but movement. Faster now, different. "They didn't expect that," Jamie said, breathless. "That's good," I replied. But I didn't feel relief. Not yet, because I knew it wouldn't slow them for long. We pushed further into the flooded ground, splashing through shallow pools, the cold water soaking through my trainers almost immediately. The air felt colder here, more open, the wind cutting across the flat land with nothing to block it. My legs were already burning. Nadia was struggling more with every step, and behind us, the sound changed again. Closer, faster. "They're coming!" she cried. I didn't look back, need to. I could hear it, feel it. They'd adjusted. Again. "They're spreading out," Jamie said, glancing over his shoulder briefly. "They're not following in a line." Of course they weren't. Why would they? This was their ground, their space. They knew exactly how to move through it. "We just need distance," I said. "Just enough." Something slammed into my shoulder. Hard. I stumbled sideways, nearly losing my footing as I hit the edge of one of the flooded patches. A figure had come in from the side. Fast. Too fast. "Callum!" Jamie shouted. I reacted without thinking, swinging the piece of wood again, catching the man across the arm. He recoiled slightly, but didn't fall back this time, stronger than before. Closer. I shoved past him, dragging Nadia with me as we pushed forward again. "Don't stop!" I shouted, but the ground was slowing us down. Every step heavier, every movement harder, and they weren't slowing. Another shape appeared ahead. Cutting us off, we veered right. Another one to the left, closing in. "They're hurting us," Jamie said, panic creeping into his voice. He was right. They weren't chasing anymore. They were guiding, forcing us into a direction we didn't choose. And suddenly I realized we weren't escaping. We were being moved. "Stop," I said suddenly. "What?" Jamie snapped. "Just stop for a second." We skidded to a halt, breathless, soaked, surrounded by open ground that didn't feel open anymore. "Look," I said, forcing myself to think through the panic. "They're not trying to catch us fast." "No," Jamie said. "They're trying to trap us properly." "Exactly." So if we kept running, we'd end up exactly where they wanted. I turned slowly, scanning the ground, the trees behind, the open land around us, the shapes moving at edges of visibility. "They're spreading out," I said again, quieter now. "Covering exits." "So what do we do?" Nadia asked, her voice barely holding together. I swallowed, then pointed, back towards the trees. "What?" Jamie said. "They think we'll keep running forward," I said. "They've set up for that." And we go back through them. For a second, neither of them moved. "That's mad," Jamie said. "Maybe," I replied, "but it's the only direction they're not expecting." Behind us, the shapes shifted again, closing in. Time was gone. We had seconds. "Trust me," I said. Jamie looked at me, then at Nadia, then back at the approaching figures. "Fine," he muttered. I didn't wait. I turned and ran straight back towards the tree line, straight at them. For a split second, everything slowed. The figures hesitated. Not much, just enough, just long enough. Then we hit them, not stopping. The lights didn't feel real at first. Even as we got closer, even as the flashing blue cut through the trees and reflected off the wet ground, part of me still expected it to disappear. Like everything else that night, something that looked like safety but wasn't. "Over here!" Jamie shouted, his voice breaking slightly as he waved his arm. I didn't shout. Couldn't. My chest was too tight, my breathing too uneven. All I could do was keep moving forward, one step at a time, pulling Nadia along until the ground evened out and the trees finally thinned enough to see properly. 2 police cars, engines running, lights flashing, real. Officers stepped forward as we broke out of the tree line, their expressions shifting instantly from alert to something more serious the moment they saw us, mud-soaked, out of breath, and clearly not okay. "Stay where you are," one of them called, more out of procedure than threat. "Hands where we can see them." We stopped, not because we had a choice, but because we didn't have anything left. Nadia collapsed to her knees first. Jamie followed a second later, dropping beside her, one hand still gripping her arm like he thought she might disappear if he let go. I stayed standing for a moment longer. Then my legs gave out. Not dramatically, just gone. 1 second I was upright. The next, I was on the ground, staring at the gravel beneath me, trying to process how we'd actually made it out. Voices surrounded us. Questions. Movement. Hands checking for injuries, pulling us slightly apart, guiding us towards the cars. "You're safe now," someone said. I didn't respond because I wasn't sure that was true. It took time, longer than I expected. We gave statements there first, short ones, broken, out of order. Enough to explain what had happened, but not enough to make sense of it fully. Then they moved us, back into town. Different officers, different questions, same story, over and over. By the time it settled, it was early morning. The kind of quiet you only get just before the town wakes up again. Pale light starting to creep into the sky, making everything look colder than it should. Jamie sat across from me in the station, arms folded, staring at nothing. Nadia had been taken to a separate room, checked over by paramedics before they spoke to her properly. I hadn't seen her since. Callum. I looked up. PC Pike. Same calm expression as before, but there was something else in it now, something more focused. We've got teams at the site, she said, and we've detained 2 individuals so far. 2 out of 4, maybe more. That's not all of them, I said immediately. We know, she replied. Her tone didn't change, didn't soften. If anything, it confirmed what I already felt. They've had time to move, I added. Yes. They know the place. Yes. We're aware, she cut in gently, and we're acting accordingly. I nodded slowly, didn't push further, because she was right. This part was out of my hands now, or at least it should have been. Later that morning, they let us leave. Not fully, not properly. We were told to stay available, keep our phones on, report anything unusual, but they couldn't keep us there. So we went. Jamie insisted on walking me back to my flat, even though neither of us said much on the way. The town looked completely different in daylight. Brighter, busier, safer. But I couldn't shake the feeling that none of that meant anything. Because now I knew what sat just outside it, waiting. We stopped outside my building. You all right, he asked. I nodded. Didn't feel it, but nodded anyway. Get some rest, he said. I'll call you later. Yeah. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else, then just turned and left. I watched him go for a second before heading inside. I didn't sleep, tried, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. The passage, the cottage, the man on the stairs, that moment at the door when it didn't open. I got up around midday and made tea I didn't drink. Sat in silence for longer than I meant to. Then my phone rang. PC Pike. They found more, she said. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew it wouldn't be good. They've recovered several items, she continued. Phones, keys, personal belongings. I swallowed. How many? She paused, enough to suggest this wasn't isolated. That matched what we'd seen. The wall, the hooks, the bags. They also confirmed, she added, that the cottage is not owned by any of the individuals we detained. It's been vacant for some time. Of course it had. They broke in, I said. Yes. How long have they been using it? We don't know yet. That didn't surprise me, because if they'd been careful, if they'd been doing this properly, then there wouldn't be a clear start, just a pattern that slowly became visible. What about the rest of them? I asked. Another pause. One fled into the trees during the search, she said. We lost track near the dunes. My chest tightened. How many total? At least 4, she replied. Possibly more. I closed my eyes briefly. Same number, same group, or at least part of it. And the one who ran? I asked. We're still searching. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Callum, she said after a moment. There's something else. I opened my eyes again. What? We found evidence suggesting they had access to delivery system data, she said carefully. We're working with the company to determine how. I let out a slow breath. So it's real, I said. Yes. They could see where we were. It appears so. That settled it. No more doubt. No more questioning whether I'd overreacted or imagined something worse than it was. It was exactly what it felt like. Worse, even. All right, I said quietly. We'll be in touch, she added. And Callum? Yeah? If anything else happens, anything at all, you call us immediately. I will. We hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, not thinking, not moving, just sitting, because now there was no uncertainty left. No gray area, just facts. They'd been doing this for a while. They'd had access. They'd planned it. And even now, even after arrests, one of them was still out there, somewhere. And the worst part wasn't that he'd escaped. It was how, through the trees. The same way we had, like it meant something, like he knew exactly where to go, exactly how to disappear. I stood up eventually and walked over to the window, looked out at the street below, people moving, cars passing, normal life. But now, I couldn't see it the same way, because I knew how easy it was to step out of it, to take the wrong job, follow the wrong instruction, turn down the wrong road, and end up somewhere no one would hear you. I stayed there for a while, watching, waiting, without really knowing what I was waiting for. Because deep down, I already understood something I hadn't wanted to admit before. They hadn't been improvising. They hadn't been reckless. They'd been careful, deliberate. And people like that don't just stop. I stopped doing night deliveries after that. Didn't ease out of it. Didn't taper it down. Just stopped. Deleted the app. Turned off notifications. Told myself I'd pick up extra hours at the off license instead. Maybe find something more stable once my course finished. Something normal. Something that didn't involve driving alone at night, following directions from people I couldn't see. For a while it worked. Days went back to feeling like days. Evenings felt predictable again. The town looked the same as it always had. Quiet, a bit worn down, but safe enough if you kept to yourself. People talked though. Not officially, not in the news, just conversations, low ones, drivers swapping stories behind the takeaway counter, mentions of weird jobs or dodgy addresses. Nothing confirmed, nothing proven, but enough to make you listen a bit closer. Jamie told me a few times that things had calmed down, that the system had been patched or at least looked cleaner on the surface. No more strange payouts, no more vanishing accounts. But he didn't sound convinced when he said it, and neither was I. Because once you see something like that, you don't really believe it's gone. You just stop seeing it. A couple of weeks passed, then a month. Life settled into something that felt almost normal again. I started sleeping better, stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed, even managed to laugh about it once or twice, though it never felt entirely real when I did. The police never called back with anything major, just the occasional follow-up, same answers every time. Still investigating, still searching, nothing further to report. And the one that stuck with me most, one individual remains unaccounted for. That was the one that didn't sit right, because it meant there was still a piece missing. Still something out there that hadn't been found, hadn't been stopped. It was a Tuesday evening when it happened again. Nothing dramatic, no storm, no tension building in the air, just a normal night. I'd finished work early, picked up a takeaway on the way home, ironic I know, and was halfway up the stairs to my flat when I noticed something on the floor outside my door. A leaflet, folded once, plain. No branding on the outside. I frowned slightly, picking it up. Probably just another takeaway menu. They get pushed through doors all the time, but this one hadn't been pushed through. It was placed, right in front of my door. That small detail was enough to make something shift in my chest. I unlocked the door slowly, stepped inside, then closed it behind me before opening the leaflet. It wasn't a menu. Not really. Just a blank piece of paper, except for one line. Handwritten, block capitals, clean, deliberate. You still turn too slowly. I stared at it, didn't move, didn't breathe, because I recognized it. Not the handwriting, not exactly, but the tone, the way it felt, the same as the messages, the same as the voice. Not angry, not rushed, just certain, like it had been written without doubt, without hesitation, like whoever wrote it wasn't worried about being seen, because they already knew enough. I checked the door behind me, locked, checked the windows, closed. The flat was silent, still, but it didn't feel that way anymore. I walked back to the door slowly, opening it just enough to look out into the hallway. Empty, no one there. No sound of footsteps, nothing. I stepped back inside and shut it again, locked it, then checked it twice. Same as before, same routine, only now it felt different, because this time, it had followed me home. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the paper still in my hand. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I flinched, actually flinched, then stared at it for a second before picking it up. Just a normal message. From Jamie. You all right? Haven't heard from you. I didn't reply straight away, didn't know what to say. Because how do you explain something like that? How do you explain that even after everything, even after the police, the investigation, something still found you, still reached you, still reminded you that it hadn't ended? I looked down at the paper again, read the line one more time. You still turn too slowly. And that's when it really hit me. Not the fear, not the panic, something colder, something heavier. Because that message didn't just mean they knew who I was. It meant they'd been watching again, recently, close enough to notice something small, something specific, something only someone paying attention would see. I stood up slowly and walked back to the window, looked out at the street below. Same as before, people walking, cars passing, nothing unusual. nothing out of place. But now, I knew better. Because the worst part of all of this isn't what happened in that park, or the cottage, or the passage. It's this, the part where everything looks normal again, where life carries on, where nothing seems wrong. Because that's when it's easiest to miss the signs, to ignore the feeling, to accept the next job, follow the next instruction, take the next turn, and end up somewhere you were never supposed to be. So if there's anything to take from this, anything at all, it's this. If something feels off, even slightly, don't ignore it. Don't explain it away. Don't tell yourself you're overthinking, because sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're just the next one they've chosen. And by the time you realize that, it might already be too late. If this story stirred something within you, be it a flicker of unease, curiosity, or deep reflection, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. What do you think is truly going on? Have you ever experienced a sense of uncanny familiarity like that before? If you have similar stories of your own, don't hesitate to share them. Who knows? Maybe we are all touching upon the same hidden frequency. And if you want to keep exploring these dramatic, mysterious, and multi-layered tales, please hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming chapters. Wishing you a truly peaceful night, where everything is still in the gentlest way, and may there always be a spark of warm light somewhere, waiting for you to find it.